Sometimes, the people who promise to protect you are the ones you need protection from. It started with a look. That look doctors give you when they think you're fragile, like one wrong word could break you. He smiled when he said it, pretending to care. I just want to make sure you're okay, Lisa. You've been through a lot lately. That was Dr. Michael Carter, my attending physician at St. John's Medical Center in Ohio. He wasn't just any doctor. He was the man everyone respected. The kind who called nurses by name, brought donuts on Fridays, and never missed a charity event. Everyone trusted him, including me. At first, I thought he was just being kind, checking in after my minor surgery, making sure my vitals were steady, offering me comforting words. But then his visits became frequent. Too frequent. He'd walk into my hospital room at odd hours, late nights, early mornings, always under the pretense of routine monitoring. His tone got softer. His questions got personal. You live alone, right? Must be hard coming home to an empty apartment. Don't worry. You're in safe hands here. I told myself it was harmless. Maybe he was just concerned. But when his hand brushed mine and stayed there too long, my chest tightened. Still, I didn't say anything. Because that's what women are taught to do, right? Don't overreact. Don't make a scene. Don't ruin a good man's reputation. A week later, I was discharged. But the calls began. From a private number. Hey, Lisa. Just checking on your recovery. How's the pain? His voice was calm, professional, but something in it made my stomach twist. When I didn't pick up, he left voicemails. When I didn't respond, he showed up. Once, in the hospital parking lot. Another time, at the cafe near my apartment. Each time, the same line. Just checking on you. The nurses whispered, You're lucky he cares so much. I smiled, pretending not to hear the tone behind those words. But I wasn't lucky. I was being watched. One evening, I came home from work to find a bouquet at my door. White lilies, my favorite. No note. No card. But I knew. That night, I barely slept. I sat by the window, lights off, watching the empty street. My hands shook when my phone buzzed. Michael, you didn't answer my last message. Are you okay? I didn't reply. The next morning, he was waiting in the hospital hallway when I came to collect my follow-up test results. He smiled like nothing was wrong. You've been ignoring me, Lisa. That's not very polite. His words were calm, but his eyes weren't. Something inside me cracked then. Not fear, not yet. But a voice I hadn't heard in years whispered, Enough. I went home, sat on the floor with my laptop, and started searching. Harassment laws. Patient rights. Hospital policy. I took screenshots of messages. Saved voicemails. Wrote down every date, every word, every visit. If he wanted to check on me, I was going to make sure someone checked on him. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel weak. I felt awake. The next morning, I drove to the hospital with a plan. My stomach was tight, my palms sweating against the steering wheel, but I wasn't backing down. I'd spent years being the woman who smiled through discomfort. Not today. I walked into Human Resources, past the wall of framed hospital awards and staff photos. The receptionist looked up, all polite confusion. Hi, can I help you? Yes, I said. I need to file a complaint against Dr. Michael Carter. The air changed. You could feel it, that quick flicker of tension people get when a good man is about to be questioned. They put me in a small office with beige walls and no windows. A woman named Marilyn came in, holding a clipboard. Lisa, I just want you to know we take these things seriously, she said, her voice soft, rehearsed. I told her everything. Every visit, every message, every time he checked on me outside the hospital. I showed her screenshots, the voicemail recordings, even the bouquet photo. When I finished, she sighed, pen hovering over the paper. Dr. Carter's been here 15 years. Are you sure this isn't a misunderstanding? There it was, the question every woman dreads. Not what happened, but are you sure it happened the way you think? My throat tightened, but I didn't break. I'm sure, I said. And I'm not the only one. Her eyes snapped up. Because I'd done my homework. The night before, I'd found an old staff Facebook group, and buried in it, a post from a former nurse. She didn't name him, but the story was too familiar. The same lines, same routine checks, same fear of speaking up. So I gave Marilyn the screenshot. And that was the first moment she didn't look bored. They told me they'd look into it. Which usually means we'll wait until you stop talking. But I wasn't stopping. I called a friend, Angela, a paralegal, and she told me exactly what to do next. Lisa, document everything. Keep a record of every call, every encounter, every minute he spends near you. Then she added, and never be alone with him again. For 2 weeks, silence. No calls. No flowers. No check-ins. I almost thought it was over until I saw him again. I was in the hospital cafeteria, grabbing a coffee before work. He walked right up to me like nothing had happened. "Lisa, we need to talk," he said. "These rumors, they're hurting my career." I froze. The entire room seemed to disappear around us. He leaned in, voice low. "You don't understand what you've done. I was just being kind." Kind. That word hit me like ice water. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "No, Michael. You were being careful, until now." Then I walked away. My hands were shaking, but I didn't cry this time, because something had shifted. For once, he was the one afraid of being seen. That night, I got an email. Subject line, investigation update. HR had officially opened a case. And guess what? That former nurse I'd found, she'd agreed to testify too. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. Because justice wasn't just a word anymore. It was moving. The hospital halls felt different after that. Colder. Quieter. People avoided eye contact when I walked by. Not because they hated me, but because they didn't know how to look at me anymore. The whispers had started. I could hear them in the break room, in the elevator, even through half-closed doors. "She's the one who complained about Dr. Carter. Can you imagine? He's been here forever." She probably misunderstood. It hurt, more than I wanted to admit. Not because I cared what they thought of him, but because I'd given years of my life to this place. And now I was the problem. One afternoon, I was called into a follow-up meeting. The HR woman, Marilyn, was there, along with a man I hadn't met before. He introduced himself as Robert Finch, hospital legal counsel. He smiled like a man who already decided what was true. "Lisa," he began, "Dr. Carter has denied any misconduct. He says your interactions were professional, and any communication outside of work was purely friendly." I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. "So the messages, the visits, the flowers, that's friendly?" He adjusted his glasses. "Without concrete proof that his intentions were inappropriate, it's difficult to." I didn't let him finish. "I have proof," I said quietly. I took out my phone, opened the voice recordings folder, and pressed play. Michael's voice filled the room. "You can't ignore me forever, Lisa. I've done a lot for you. Don't make me regret it." The silence after that was thick. Marilyn's pen stopped moving. Robert leaned back, his face unreadable. I looked at them both and said, "You can call that friendly if you want. I call it intimidation." After that meeting, things moved fast. Faster than I expected. Michael was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. HR sent out a neutral memo to staff, reminding everyone of workplace boundaries and reporting procedures, without naming names, of course. But people knew. The nurses stopped smiling when he walked by. The male doctors kept their distance. The air was thick with something new, accountability. He didn't like that. A week later, I got a letter from his attorney. Formal language, full of legal threats, defamation, character damage, career sabotage. He wanted to scare me into silence. But I didn't flinch. I'd already lived through the fear once. And this time I had backup. Angela helped me contact a women's legal defense network. They took my case pro bono, and the lawyer, Rachel Lewis, was everything Michael wasn't. Direct. Calm. Fearless. She said, "Lisa, don't respond to anything yourself. We'll handle it." If he wants to play legal games, he picked the wrong woman. The investigation stretched for weeks. Every day I'd wake up, check my email, and feel that tiny knot of dread tighten. But slowly, that dread turned into resolve. Because every new day I stood my ground was another day he lost control. I still went to work. I still treated my patients. I smiled when I needed to, but I didn't shrink anymore. Not even when I saw him once in the hallway, escorted out by security, his white coat folded over his arm. He didn't meet my eyes that time. He just kept walking. That night, when I got home, I sat on the couch in silence. No fear, no shaking hands. Just quiet. And for the first time in a long while, I realized something. Survival had turned into strength. By the time the official hearing date arrived, I wasn't scared anymore, just tired. Tired of the whispers. Tired of pretending I didn't hear my name being dragged through conversations I wasn't part of. Tired of acting like I was the problem for speaking the truth. But that morning, as I looked in the mirror and pinned my badge to my scrubs, I reminded myself. He took my peace. I'm here to take it back. The conference room they used for the disciplinary hearing was too bright, too sterile. A long table, nameplates, and the smell of burnt coffee. On one side sat Michael and his attorney. On the other, me, Rachel, and 2 representatives from HR. He looked smaller than I remembered. Still in control of his posture, but not his presence. For the first time, his confidence didn't fill the room. The chairwoman began, her voice steady. Dr. Carter, Ms. Reynolds, we're here to review the allegations of misconduct and harassment. Both parties will have a chance to speak. He went first. He talked about his reputation, his years of service, his concern for my well-being. He used words like misunderstood, professional, compassionate. And he did it all while looking directly at me, daring me to flinch. But I didn't, because behind that calm smile was the man who used my fear as his comfort. When it was my turn, my hands trembled just once, when I picked up the microphone. Then, everything I'd rehearsed in my head came out like I'd been waiting my whole life to say it. I trusted my doctor, I began. I trusted this hospital. I didn't expect to be watched, followed, or spoken to like I was something he owned. I wasn't confused. I wasn't emotional. I was violated by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. The room went silent. Even his attorney looked down at his notes. Rachel slid a printed page across the table. Phone records, screenshots, timestamps. Each one a nail in the coffin of his excuses. When the audio recording played, you could hear my breath hitch, and his voice sharp and entitled. Don't ignore me again, Lisa. I don't like being ignored. The chairwoman stopped the recording before it finished. Her face said everything words couldn't. He tried to defend himself one last time, but it sounded hollow. Every sentence chipped away at the image he'd built for years. The committee took a brief recess. When they came back, the chairwoman looked directly at him. Dr. Carter, effective immediately, you are suspended without pay pending further action from the medical board. You are not to contact Ms. Reynolds or any hospital staff regarding this matter. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at the table like he couldn't believe the world had finally stopped revolving around him. When I walked out of that room, Rachel smiled. You did it, she said. I nodded, but it didn't feel like victory, not yet. It felt like breathing after being underwater for too long. That night, I went home, took a long shower, and sat by my window again. The same one I used to stare through, afraid of every sound outside. Only this time, the silence didn't scare me. It felt earned. I thought that would be the end. But the truth has a way of echoing louder than you expect. And by the end of that week, I learned that I wasn't the only one he'd checked on. By the following week, the hospital felt different. The kind of different that only comes after someone finally stands up, when the walls of silence start to crack. I started getting messages from other staff members. Short, cautious at first. I saw what happened. Thank you for speaking up. I've been through something similar. I didn't think anyone would listen. Then longer emails. Stories of boundaries crossed, intimidation, whispers in hallways. Some had been too afraid to speak before. Some had tried but were dismissed. Now they were reaching out. I realized something powerful. I hadn't just defended myself. I had created space for others. One afternoon, I met with Angela at a cafe near my apartment. We sat across from each other, hands wrapped around warm mugs. You're going to make a difference, she said quietly. I wanted to laugh. After all, I'd just been surviving. But deep down, I knew she was right. We spent hours planning next steps, filing additional reports, connecting with local media to raise awareness, working with a coalition that protected hospital staff from harassment. It wasn't revenge. It was prevention. It was dignity in action. Then came the day I saw him again, this time in a hospital board meeting. He was allowed back temporarily, under supervision. The entire room seemed to tense as he walked in, shoulders stiff, trying to appear unshaken. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. When he caught my gaze, his eyes flickered. Something that wasn't arrogance anymore. Fear. Regret. I couldn't tell. And I didn't need to. Because the woman he had tried to intimidate was no longer hiding. No longer afraid. Over the next month, things escalated, legally. His attorney tried filing motions to discredit me. They questioned my credibility, my character, even my mental state. I sat in the attorney's office, listening. Rachel didn't flinch, didn't argue. She let the facts speak. Emails, screenshots, voicemails, witness statements, concrete, undeniable evidence that I had meticulously collected from day one. By the end, his motions were dismissed. Every attempt to gaslight me failed. Every attempt to make me doubt myself failed. I realized something vital. When you document truth, it has power. That night, I returned home and went straight to my bedroom mirror. I stared at my reflection for a long time. The woman in the glass had the same eyes. But she held herself differently. Stronger. Unapologetic. Unafraid. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Not a polite, small smile, but the one that starts deep in your chest. Because I knew the world had shifted. Just a little. And I had helped it move. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was standing. I was seen. I was unstoppable. It was mid-November when I got the call from the hospital's board. They wanted a final statement from me before Michael's case went to the state medical board. I could feel the weight of every encounter, every day I'd feared him, pressing on my chest. But this time I was calm. The fear was gone, replaced with clarity. I had done the work. I had the evidence. I had my voice. I walked into the boardroom, a small, wood-paneled room with a long oval table. Board members were already seated, notebooks open, pens ready. I took my seat and waited for the silence to settle. The first person to speak was Michael's attorney. He tried the same lines I'd heard before. Ms. Reynolds may have misinterpreted professional concern. Dr. Carter is respected in his field and has no prior misconduct. I listened quietly, letting them finish. Then I leaned forward and said, softly but clearly, I am not misinterpreting anything. I am reporting the truth. This man used his position to intimidate me, to follow me, to invade my space. And I have the evidence to prove it. I placed my folder on the table, carefully organized, labeled, time-stamped. Every email, every voicemail, every text, every witness statement. The board listened. Some nodded. Some frowned. Some, I noticed, exchanged glances that said we should have acted sooner. I felt the power shift in that room. It wasn't mine to claim. It was mine to show. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to plead. The truth did all the work for me. Then came the questions, detailed, pointed, professional. Why didn't you report sooner? Could there have been a misunderstanding? Do you fear retaliation? I answered honestly, each word measured. I didn't report sooner because I didn't know if anyone would believe me. But I kept records. I sought advice. I did not act impulsively. And no, I am not afraid now, because the truth is on my side. The board members scribbled notes, asked follow-ups, and eventually called for a brief recess. When they returned, the room felt lighter. Not because the case was over, but because the truth had been fully laid bare. After a tense half-hour, the board chair spoke. Based on the evidence presented, Dr. Carter's license will be suspended for 6 months, pending further review. Additionally, he is prohibited from contacting Ms. Reynolds or any hospital staff during this period. Any violation will result in permanent revocation. The words hit me like sunlight after a storm. Michael didn't argue. He couldn't. And for the first time, the woman who had feared his shadow realized she had stepped out of it entirely. Walking out of the boardroom, I felt a calm I hadn't known in months. No adrenaline. No trembling hands. Just quiet victory. I paused at the elevator and stared at my reflection in the polished metal doors. The same Lisa. But someone else too, someone who had fought, endured, and refused to be diminished. I realized then, this wasn't just about him. It was about every time I'd silenced myself. Every time I'd ignored my instincts. Every time I'd thought my voice didn't matter. And now it did. That night, I didn't celebrate with champagne or social media posts. I sat by my window, listening to the city hum below. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt peace. The final day came quietly, almost anticlimactically. I walked into the hospital as usual, badge clipped to my scrubs, coffee in hand, and a folder of patient notes under my arm. Everything looked the same white walls, the same hum of machines, the same orderly chaos. But I was different. I wasn't the Lisa who had sat in fear weeks ago, heart racing every time he appeared. I was the Lisa who had spoken truth to power, who had faced intimidation, who had meticulously built a record of facts and evidence that no one could ignore. I had reclaimed my dignity, and nothing in those sterile hallways could take it from me. Michael wasn't there. His desk was empty, his white coat gone. For the first time, his absence felt like freedom, not just distance. It was the physical confirmation of the boundary I had set, enforced by law and by courage. I passed colleagues in the hall, some nodding, some smiling softly. No whispers, no judgment, just respect. And in that moment, I realized how far I'd come. I hadn't just survived. I had transformed my fear into strength, my silence into voice. Weeks later, I attended a small staff meeting about workplace safety. The hospital board thanked me for my bravery in speaking up and creating a safer environment for everyone. I looked around the room and saw nods of appreciation, subtle but meaningful. Not for revenge, not for attention, but for integrity, for the courage to uphold dignity when it mattered most. That night, I returned to my apartment and sat by the window, the same spot I had used to watch the streets in fear. Now, I watched them in quiet reflection. I thought about the months that had tested me, the late-night voicemails, the fear of being followed, the whispered doubts, the threats from attorneys. I remembered the knot in my stomach, the shaking hands, the sleepless nights. And I smiled, not because the fight was easy, but because I had endured it. Because I had learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to act despite it. Because I had learned that power isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling your own life. I opened my journal one last time and wrote, "Sometimes you survive. Sometimes you fight. Sometimes you rise. And sometimes, rising quietly is the loudest victory of all." I closed the journal, placed it on my nightstand, and leaned back against the window frame. I felt a warmth in my chest, a calm that comes only when you know you've reclaimed yourself. And as I looked out at the city lights, I whispered to no one in particular, "This is what freedom feels like." If you were in my place, what would you have done? Write it in the comments.